Before this story begins, take a moment. If you believe in strength, in hope, and in never giving up, hit that subscribe button, drop a like, and tell me in the comments, what keeps you strong when life gets heavy? Because this is the story of a woman who carried more than just a log. She carried her whole world, and someone watched her do it in silence. The sun was sinking low behind the mountain ridge, its golden fire spilling across the valley like liquid hope. The air smelled of pine, dust, and sweat. The sound of a rope scraping against wood echoed through the quiet, a woman's strength pulling against the weight of a massive log. Her name was Clara Hayes, a widow trying to rebuild what the frontier had taken from her. The year was 1879, and this land didn't forgive the weak. Her husband had built half that cabin before a storm took him, and the cabin with him. Now Clara was all that was left of that dream. Beside her, her loyal horse Dusty watched quietly, ears twitching, eyes steady. He didn't speak, but his presence was the only warmth she had left. From the ridge above, a man on horseback sat in stillness, the cowboy, Eli Grant. His eyes followed every pull of the rope, every tremble in Clara's arms. He wasn't there to help, not yet. Some burdens, he knew, couldn't be shared until the soul was ready. Every tug of that log was a memory of the nights she slept under the stars beside her husband's tools, of the winters she nearly didn't make it through. The cabin wasn't just wood and nails, it was survival itself. "Come on, Dusty," she whispered, voice trembling but firm. "We're almost there." The horse neighed softly as if to say, "I'm here, I'm with you." The ground was uneven, the rope biting into her palms. Her body screamed for rest, but her heart, that unbreakable heart, refused to listen. And up on that ridge, Eli's grip tightened on his reins. He wanted to help, God, he wanted to, but the law of the land said, don't interfere with another soul's test. He had seen her before, the woman who refused to bend, even when life broke her. Rumors said she hadn't spoken to anyone in months. But every morning, the sound of her hammer echoed through the valley like a heartbeat. The sky darkened into deep orange and violet hues. Dusty snorted, tired, and Clara fell to her knees, breathing hard. Eli couldn't watch any longer. He rode down slowly, his horse's hooves soft against the dirt. When she looked up, sweat and tears mixed on her cheeks. "You're gonna break your back, miss," he said softly. She didn't answer, just wiped her face and pulled the rope again. "I don't break," she said, voice low but sharp. Eli watched, and something inside him shifted, that kind of strength. It was rare out here. He dismounted, moved closer, and for the first time Dusty stepped forward, nostrils flaring as if testing this stranger's soul. Eli extended a hand, not to help, but in respect. "Didn't come to stop you," he said quietly. "Just to make sure you make it through." She paused, eyes narrowing. The wind carried her hair across her face, the sun painting fire into it. "I always do," she said. The rope tightened again, the log inching forward. Together, woman and horse pulled as Eli stood by, silent, until the log reached the cabin's foundation. And when it dropped into place, Clara didn't cry. She just exhaled, looking at the sky. "Guess that's one piece of home back where it belongs," she whispered. Eli smiled faintly, tipping his hat. "World needs more folks like you, ma'am," he said. She looked up at him, eyes hard but kind. "The world doesn't need me," she replied. "It just needs people who don't quit." As the last light of sunset faded, Dusty nudged her shoulder gently, as if proud. Eli turned to leave but stopped halfway. "You building this all alone?" he asked. She looked at the half-built cabin, then at her hands, rough, scarred, and strong. "Not alone," she said softly, glancing at Dusty. "He's my partner." Eli smiled again, then rode off into the twilight. Clara stood there, the golden sky behind her, Dusty beside her, a woman who had lost everything, yet refused to lose herself. The sky changed fast in the Wild West, faster than a man could draw his gun, faster than a prayer could leave a heart. By dusk, clouds rolled over the mountains like angry beasts. The air grew cold, the light dimmed to the color of smoke. Clara stood at the cabin's frame, hammering the last nail of the day. Her arms ached, her palms burned, but she didn't stop. Dusty stood nearby, his tail flicking at the biting wind. She looked toward the ridge, where the cowboy had been the night before. Empty now, but she could feel eyes on her. Somehow she knew Eli Grant hadn't gone far. The first drops of rain hit her cheek like whispers from the past. "You again," she murmured at the clouds. "Didn't think you'd come back so soon." But the storm didn't care what she thought. It came rolling through the valley, bringing wind that howled through the pines and rain that stung like needles. Clara rushed to cover the tools. Dusty neighed loud, nervous, stamping his hooves. "Easy, boy," she said, rubbing his muzzle. "We've faced worse." But her eyes told a different story, because she remembered the last storm, the one that took her husband. The night she lost her home, her hope, and almost her life. The lightning flashed, and in that split second, she saw him again, not her husband, but Eli, riding hard down the slope toward her, rain pouring off his hat. "Clara!" he shouted through the storm.
"Get inside!"
she yelled back, voice drowned by thunder. "There is no inside!" Eli dismounted fast, tying his horse beside Dusty. He grabbed a tarp, helping her cover the half-built roof. The wind fought them like a wild animal, tearing at the cloth. "Let me help," he yelled. She glared at him, hair whipping across her face. "I told you, I don't need help." Lightning cracked again, lighting her face like a flame, fierce, unbroken. But Eli didn't step back. He planted the tarp down, hammering nails against the wind. "Maybe you don't need it," he said, voice steady, "but you deserve it." The words hung there. Even the storm paused for half a heartbeat. Then the rain came harder. Hours passed. Together they fought the storm, side by side, nailing boards, tightening ropes, holding down walls that wanted to fly away. At one point, a strong gust ripped the rope from Clara's hand. The log beam shifted, ready to fall. Dusty neighed and pulled forward, using his strength to steady the frame. Eli shouted, "Hold on!" and grabbed the rope, pulling with all his might. Clara dropped beside him, their hands side by side on the same line, pulling against the wind like two souls against fate. The beam settled. The wind screamed, and then silence. They both fell back in the mud, breathing hard, rain dripping from their faces. Dusty shook himself off, standing guard like a soldier. For the first time, Clara laughed, just a small, tired laugh, but real. Eli smiled. "Didn't think you knew how to do that," he said softly. She looked up at him, chest rising and falling. "Don't get used to it," she replied. "I laugh when I win." By midnight, the storm began to fade. The rain slowed to a whisper. The clouds broke just enough for the moon to peek through, pale and kind. Eli stood, stretching his sore arms. "You're something else, Clara Hayes," he said quietly. She didn't answer right away. She was looking at Dusty, her hands on his wet mane. "He's the reason I'm still here," she said. "The night my husband died, Dusty found me under the wreckage, pulled me out, didn't run, didn't leave, just stayed." Eli looked at the horse, then at her. "Good horse," he said. "The best," she whispered. For a long while, there was only the sound of rain dripping from the eaves. Then Clara spoke again. "You came back," she said. Eli shrugged. "Storm looked bad," she smiled faintly. "Storms are always bad. Doesn't mean you ride into them." He looked at her, really looked at her. The scars, the mud, the fire still burning behind her tired eyes. "Some things," he said, "are worth riding into." The storm finally moved on, leaving the world washed clean. The air smelled like rain and hope. Clara sat beside the fire she managed to start under the tarp. Dusty rested nearby, his breathing deep and steady. Eli sat across from her, hat in his hands, eyes on the flames. Neither spoke for a while. The silence was the kind that healed, not hurt. Finally, Clara said quietly, "Thank you." Eli nodded once. "Don't mention it," she smiled. "I won't." And then, with the faintest spark of warmth in her eyes, she added, "But you can come by tomorrow. There's another beam to lift." He smiled back. "Wouldn't miss it." The morning after the storm was silent, too silent. The valley that once echoed with thunder now breathed softly, every leaf heavy with rain. The cabin still stood, half-built but alive, like a wounded soldier who refused to fall. Clara stepped out from under the tarp, stretching her stiff arms. Her dress was torn, her boots caked with mud, but her spirit was fierce as ever. Beside her, Dusty shook the water from his mane. His dark coat gleamed in the early light, his eyes calm and loyal. She smiled and patted his neck. "We did it, boy," she whispered. "We're still standing." A voice came from behind her. "Didn't think there was any 'we' in your dictionary," Eli said, leaning against a post, hat low over his brow. Clara turned, half smiling. "You still here?" He grinned. "Somebody's got to make sure that beam we fought for didn't crush you in your sleep." They worked in quiet rhythm for hours. Eli cut wood. Clara measured and hammered. Dusty hauled the smaller logs, strong and patient. The morning sun climbed higher, drying the damp earth. And for the first time in months, Clara felt something she hadn't known in years. Peace. It wasn't loud or grand. It was quiet, like the whisper of the wind through pine needles. At one point, Eli looked up from sawing. "You ever think about leaving this place?" he asked. Clara paused, eyes tracing the mountain line. "I did, once. But where would I go? This is where he's buried. And this," she gestured to the cabin, "this was our dream. If I leave, I lose him again." Eli nodded slowly. "Guess some roots don't grow in soil. They grow in memories." She looked at him for a moment, surprised at the poetry in his voice. "You talk like a preacher," she said. He smiled faintly. "Nah, just a man who's lost a few dreams himself." As the sun dipped lower, they took a break by the fence. Dusty grazed nearby, his tail flicking lazily. Clara handed Eli a tin cup of water. He took it, nodding in thanks. "Your horse," he said, glancing at Dusty. "He ever run off?" She shook her head. "Never." "Strange," Eli said. "Most horses'll bolt in a storm like that." Clara smiled softly. "He's not like most. He was born wild, caught him myself. But something about him. He listens, feels, like he knows my heart before I do." Dusty lifted his head just then, as if he understood every word. Eli chuckled. "Seems like he does." For a moment, silence again. Only the wind and the soft sound of hooves on wet ground. Then Clara spoke quietly. "When my husband died, folks said I should sell the land. Said no woman could make it here alone. Maybe they were right, but Dusty stayed. And every time I wanted to give up, he'd look at me like..." She paused, her voice breaking slightly, "like I wasn't allowed to." Eli looked at her. Really looked. The way her voice cracked, the way her eyes still carried storms of their own. He set his cup down. "Clara," he said softly, "you're not alone anymore." That night they built the cabin walls higher. The sound of hammering echoed through the valley like music. Under the pale moonlight, the structure started to look less like a ruin and more like a home. Dusty lay near the fire, his head resting on the ground, watching them with sleepy eyes. Eli stood, stretching his back. "You know," he said, "I've built barns, fences, even a saloon once. But this feels different." Clara wiped her forehead with the back of her hand. "Because it's not just wood. It's purpose." He smiled. "Yeah? Purpose?" Later, as the fire burned low, Clara sat beside Dusty, brushing his mane. "You've seen me at my worst, haven't you, boy?" She whispered. "But maybe it's time to let someone else see that too." Dusty snorted softly, almost in approval. Eli's voice came from the shadows. "He agrees with me." She turned, startled, then laughed, a sound that surprised even her. "Don't eavesdrop on private conversations," she said. He walked closer, eyes warm. Not my fault your conversations echo. For a long moment, they just looked at each other, two souls the world had tried to break, now standing side by side in its quiet aftermath. The fire cracked. The night deepened. Eli finally said, "Clara, what are you going to do when the cabin's done?" She thought for a moment, eyes reflecting the firelight. "Live," she said. "Really live this time." He nodded slowly. "Then maybe I'll stick around long enough to see that." She smiled, small, genuine, the kind that only comes when a wall begins to fall. Weeks passed, and the cabin finally stood whole. The roof held steady under the morning sun. Smoke curled from the chimney, carrying the scent of life, wood fire, coffee, hope. Clara leaned against the doorway, watching Dusty graze by the fence. He looked older now, slower but still proud, still loyal. Behind her, Eli stepped out with 2 tin mugs. "Black coffee," he said, handing her one. "No sugar. Didn't seem like your type." She smiled faintly. "You're learning." They stood in silence, sipping, the valley glowing gold before them. The cabin, her dream, her husband's memory, and was complete. But something inside Clara felt uneasy. She had built the home she promised, and yet the question remained, now what? That afternoon, Eli saddled his horse. "Gonna ride to town," he said. "Stock's low. You need anything?" Clara shook her head. "Just hurry back before dark." He tipped his hat, smiled, and rode off down the dusty trail. Dusty raised his head, watching Eli disappear behind the ridge. The day went quiet again. Too quiet. By sunset, the wind shifted to sharp, cold. The same kind of wind that once carried storms. Dusty began pacing near the fence, uneasy. Clara felt it too, that old whisper in the air. Something wasn't right. Then she heard it, faint at first, then clearer. Hoofbeats, fast, panicked. Eli's horse came galloping back, riderless, saddle empty. Clara's heart dropped. "Eli," she whispered. Without thinking, she grabbed her coat and ran to Dusty. "Come on, boy. We're going." Dusty neighed and knelt slightly, letting her climb onto his back, something he hadn't done in years. Together, they rode into the rising wind, the valley stretching before them like a dark sea. The trail wound through rocky hills, the scent of dust and pine thick in the air. Lightning flickered on the horizon, not a storm this time, but something worse. Clara spotted a figure near the ridge, Eli, trapped under a fallen branch, his leg pinned. His horse must have slipped on the rocks. "Eli!" she cried, jumping off Dusty. He looked up, grimacing. "Clara! You shouldn't be here." "Don't you start!" she snapped. "You came into my storm once. Now it's my turn." She grabbed the branch, pushing with all her strength. It wouldn't budge. The wood was too heavy, her arms trembling. Dusty stepped forward, snorting, lowering his head to the branch. Clara tied the rope around it, looping it over Dusty's saddle horn. "Pull, Dusty," she whispered. "Come on, boy, one more time." The horse pulled hard, muscles straining, hooves digging into the dirt. The branch creaked, shifted, and finally rolled free. Eli gasped in relief. Clara dropped beside him, checking his leg. "It's broken," she said. "I'll manage," he muttered. "You'll do as I say," she replied sharply. "You're not dying here." Dusty stood still, breathing heavy. The old horse looked tired, his flanks rising and falling fast. Clara stroked his mane. "You did good, boy. You did so good." Hours later they reached the cabin, Clara half carrying, half dragging Eli inside. The fire was out. She lit it fast, then tended his leg. Eli tried to speak, but she hushed him. "Don't talk. You rest." Dusty stood outside the open door, watching them quietly, as if guarding them one last time. The night grew colder. The fire cracked softly. Clara dozed beside Eli's bed, exhausted. When she woke at dawn, the light was soft and pink, but Dusty was gone. She found him down by the fence, lying still. The rope still tied to his saddle, the same one that saved Eli's life. Clara knelt beside him, tears spilling freely now. "Dusty," she whispered. "You never left me, not once." Eli limped over, his face pale, eyes heavy with sorrow. He placed a hand on her shoulder. "He waited until you were safe," he said quietly. "That's what good souls do." She stroked Dusty's muzzle one last time. His coat was cold, but his expression peaceful, as if he finally rested after all the storms. They buried him under the pine tree near the cabin, where the wind always whispered gently through the branches. Clara placed his old bridle on the grave, whispering a prayer. Days passed. The valley returned to its rhythm. The wind, the mountains, the quiet peace of survival. Eli healed slowly. Clara stayed by his side, but something in her had changed. She had faced every storm life could give her, and still stood tall. One evening, as the sun set, Eli asked softly, "What'll you do now, Clara?" She looked at the horizon, where the light met the land. "I'll keep going," she said. "For him, for me, for everyone who thought I couldn't." Eli nodded. "You're the strongest person I've ever known," she smiled faintly. "Not strong," she said, "just stubborn." They both laughed, quiet, honest laughter that echoed across the golden field. And for the first time in years, the valley felt alive again. If this story touched your heart, if Dusty's loyalty, Clara's strength, and Eli's faith reminded you that hope never dies, then hit that subscribe button. Like and share this video so more people can feel it too. Comment below, who was your Dustier, the one who never gave up on you? Because remember, storms may take everything you have, but if you stand tall and keep your heart true,